The thief named Trương. They called him Trương Tam, but most just whispered his name like a curse. A man whose face had been worn out by time and hardship, small in stature, with hollow cheeks, and a gaze that seemed both desperate and defiant. In the slums near the edge of Thanakayan village, he was a familiar figure. Dirty, barefoot, and always clutching a sack, Trương was known for sneaking into chicken coops, stealing birds in the dead of night to trade for cheap rice wine and scraps. But despite his miserable state, Trương carried an odd kind of pride. "I'm not just some rat-eating thief," he would slur whenever drunk. "I descend from the Trương family once honored by kings. One day, I'll bring our name back into glory. You'll see." No one listened, no one cared. They just chased him away. A stormy night and a desperate escape. That night, the sky tore open with thunder. Rain poured like buckets from heaven, drenching the rice fields and turning narrow dirt paths into flowing streams. Under that black sky, Trương Tam was on the run. He'd been caught again trying to steal a rooster from old man Quay's yard. This time, Q wasn't alone. A handful of villagers joined the chase, wielding sticks and shouting curses as they ran through the muddy paths. "Thief! Catch that bastard! Break his legs!" Trің's heart pounded like a drum. His feet splashed through puddles, slipping on moss-covered rocks as he darted between the trees. Lightning struck close, lighting up his path for a split second. And that was when he saw it. A worn, crumbling gate half buried under vines leading into what looked like an abandoned graveyard. He didn't think. He just ran through it. The forgotten cemetery. Once inside, the world seemed to change. The air was colder, the rain quieter. The villagers' voices disappeared behind him, as if swallowed whole. Tall, twisted trees lined the path, their branches looking more like claws than limbs. Graves were everywhere, some nothing more than piles of stone, others half sunken into the earth. A few tombs had toppled, their lids cracked open like yawning mouths. Trің's chest heaved with exhaustion. He found an old shrine at the center of the graveyard, more a ruin than a structure. Its roof sagged, moss and rot clung to every corner, but it had shelter. He slipped inside. Inside, there was only dust, spiderwebs, and silence. A broken statue of some ancient god sat at the altar, its face completely worn smooth, as if time itself had erased it. Trương slumped in a corner, shivering. His hands still clutched the bloody rooster he'd stolen. But hunger overtook fear. He bit into it raw. Strange whispers in the wind. Outside, the storm continued. But inside the shrine, something had changed. At first, he thought it was the wind, a soft, dragging sound like cloth being pulled across the floor. Then came the whispering, quiet, breathless. "You dare disturb." Trương froze. His mouth hung open, blood from the chicken dripping down his chin. His eyes darted toward the altar. There was no one. But something had shifted. The statue hadn't it been broken? Now, its head was whole, and its face was that a feline snarl. Lightning flashed again, briefly illuminating a corner of the shrine. And for just a moment, just a flicker, Trương saw it. A black cat, sitting silently, watching him. Its eyes glowed red. Then, it vanished. The box beneath the shrine. After what felt like hours, Trương finally dared to move again. He lit a match with trembling fingers. The shrine was still and empty. But something compelled him, not fear, not hunger, but an eerie curiosity. He began exploring the space. Behind the altar, half buried in dirt and ash, he found it. A small wooden box, old, cracked, bound with red string. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he opened it. Inside was a tattered piece of parchment, a map, drawn in black ink. showing a path leading from the graveyard to something marked Kim Quan. Alongside the map was a note written in old Vietnamese script. He who follows the cat's path shall awaken the blood of the old house. But beware, the price is not paid in gold, but in soul. Trần didn't understand all of it, but one word stood out clearly. Trần, family name carved faintly in the lower corner. Something twisted in his chest. Was this connected to his ancestors? He looked up again at the statue. Now, the cat was there, not just in the corner but sitting on the altar. This time, it did not vanish. Its eyes blinked once. Then it turned its head slowly, as if beckoning him to follow. The cat leads the way. Trần stood up, almost as if in a trance. The rain had stopped. The sky outside was a dark sheet, stars hidden behind thick clouds. The cat jumped down from the altar and slinked through the broken doorway. Without thinking, Trần followed it, out of the shrine, across the graves, and deeper into the woods. The cat never ran. It walked slow and silent. Its black fur seemed to shimmer under the dim moonlight. And though Trần felt fear at the edges of his mind, something greater pulled him forward. An instinct, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. They walked for hours or maybe minutes. Time felt distorted. Then the cat stopped. They stood before a mound hidden beneath tree roots and old stones. A patch of ground that didn't look like a grave, but wasn't quite natural either. The cat looked up at him. Then it disappeared into the shadows. The unearthly door. Using his bare hands, Trần dug. The soil was soft to soft, as if freshly disturbed, though no one had touched it for decades. After only a few minutes, his fingers struck something hard. Stone. He cleared the dirt. A square slab revealed itself. In the center was a symbol, a twisting design resembling a cat with 9 tails, fangs bared, eyes filled with fire. The same symbol that had been faintly scratched on the map. Trần pressed against the stone. It didn't budge. Then, almost without meaning to, he took the bloodied rooster, now half-eaten, and smeared its blood across the carving. A deep rumble echoed through the trees, and slowly the stone slab began to shift. A cold gust of air spilled from below, carrying with it the scent of old death, burned incense, and something sharp metallic like rusted blood. Beneath him, stairs spiraled down into the earth, and at the bottom darkness. But in that darkness, something waited. Something ancient, something hungry. Trương Tam, the chicken thief, grinned. Looks like the Trần name really will rise again. And he stepped down into the tomb, not knowing that with every step, he was being watched by something not of this world. The crumbled shrine and the strange box. The wind howled through the broken slats of the ruined shrine, carrying with it the scent of mold, dust, and something older, something sour and metallic. Trương Tam pressed his back against the decaying wall, chest still heaving from the run. The rain outside had softened into a drizzle, but inside, silence fell like a wet blanket over his shoulders. He was alone, or so he thought. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the shrine's interior for just a moment. In that instant, Trần caught sight of a pile of dislodged bricks near the altar, bricks that looked like they had been moved recently. The ground beneath them bulged slightly, uneven and loose. Something buried. His eyes narrowed. He moved carefully, mindful of the creaking floorboards, and began to dig. At first, it was just mud and stones, but within minutes, his fingers struck something hard. Wood. An old box. It wasn't large, about the size of a man's head, but it was carved with strange markings, twisting lines. Eyes, claws, and cats, dozens of them, etched into the wood with incredible detail. Each cat had different expressions, some calm, others snarling. One had no face at all. The box was tied shut with red twine, frayed with age. Trần stared at it, his fingers hovering. He'd heard stories Wo hadn't. In Vietnam's old villages, people whispered about cursed boxes and forbidden shrines. Some said opening the wrong thing could unleash spirits. Others claimed they had seen people vanish without a trace after disturbing graves. But those were just tales, right? He untied the string. The box creaked open. Inside lay two objects, a yellowed piece of parchment, folded carefully, and a small jade carving of a cat, its tail coiled, mouth open in a silent hiss. He ignored the jade, focusing on the paper. When he unfolded it, his breath caught. It was a map, hand-drawn in thick black ink. The map showed the layout of the surrounding area, starting with the very shrine he was standing in. A winding trail led through the cemetery, deep into the forest, where a symbol had been drawn, a strange seal in the shape of a nine-tailed cat, wrapped around a circle. Next to it, two words written in old Vietnamese. Kim Quan. Kim Quan, he whispered. He'd heard that name before. Whispers in the market. Drunken rumors over rice wine. A forbidden tomb. No one knew who built it. Some said it was a royal burial ground. Others claimed it was a prison for something too dangerous to walk free. But the common thread in every version was the same. No one who found Kim Quan ever returned. The decision. Trần stared down at the map, then back at the shrine's altar. Is this fate? He muttered. My ancestors, the Trần family, could they be buried there? The thought burned in his chest. He was nothing now. A beggar, a thief. But this could be his chance. If the tomb was real, if there was treasure or secrets, or even proof of his bloodline, it could change everything. He could rise again, make the world bow to the name Trần once more. Of course, there was fear, but hunger, both literal and not drowned it out. With trembling hands, he folded the map and tucked it inside his shirt. The jade cat he left in the box, something about it unsettled him. It felt too alive. Then he stood up, grabbed a broken lantern hanging from a beam, and lit the stub of a candle he kept in his pocket. The shadows danced as the flame flickered. The shrine suddenly seemed darker than before, and from the doorway something watched him. Eyes in the night. He stepped outside into the cemetery. The rain had stopped completely now, and fog had begun to roll in, curling around the gravestones like white snakes. The map was surprisingly clear. It led him past three distinct tombstones shaped like a turtle, one with a stone pagoda, and one half collapsed. He counted them off as he passed. With every step, the fog grew thicker, and then he heard it. Meow. Low, hoarse, right behind him. He spun around. Nothing. He turned back. Standing on a cracked gravestone, just a few feet ahead, was a black cat. The same one from the shrine. It stared at him, eyes like molten gold, unblinking. Trần took a cautious step forward. The cat leapt down and began walking slow, confidently along the path shown on the map. It turned once to look at him, as if to say, follow. So he did. Into the trees. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The trees here were ancient, twisted and bent, some hollow, some blackened as if struck by lightning long ago. Their roots rose above the ground, knotted like veins beneath rotting leaves. No sound of crickets, no wind. Only the occasional whisper that didn't belong to either of them. Trần kept his hand on the map, checking it every few minutes. Yes, this was right. But something was wrong too. The ground was too soft, like he was walking on a sponge. The air too still, too heavy. His candle flame didn't flicker anymore. It simply stood straight, unmoving, like the air had forgotten how to breathe. Then the cat stopped. At the base of an old banyan tree was a mound barely noticeable, covered in moss and roots. But once Trần brushed the surface away, He saw it. Stone. A square door buried just beneath the dirt. The same seal from the map was carved into it. Kim Kwan. The stone door opens. Chernang hesitated. His lantern glowed faintly, barely enough to see by now. His hands were cold, muddy. But still, he pressed both palms against the stone and pushed. Nothing. He cursed, tried again. Still nothing. Then he remembered the note from the box. The price is not paid in gold, but in soul. He bit the inside of his cheek, hard. When blood welled up, he smeared it onto the carved symbol. Silence. Then click. The stone shifted with a loud grinding sound, as if 1,000 years of silence were being broken. The slab slid open, revealing a dark staircase spiraling down into the earth. The walls inside were lined with symbols, eyes, teeth, cats, so many cats. Chernang stepped down. Each footfall echoed like a drumbeat. The deeper he went, the colder it became. The tomb of whispers. At the bottom was a chamber vast and echoing. Torches lit themselves as he entered, one by one, revealing walls covered in murals. He walked slowly, breath fogging in front of him. One mural showed a manable robes, Longbird kneeling before a giant black cat. Another showed the same man's body torn apart, his soul rising as a nine-tailed feline spirit. And another showed the cat devouring the world. Chernang stood frozen. This wasn't a tomb. It was a temple, dedicated to something old, something worshipped, something feared. Then he saw the sarcophagus at the center. It was gold, or something like it, covered in carvings, etched with the same seal from the map. He approached, heart pounding. What was inside? Bones, a crown, a weapon. But just as he reached out to touch it, a loud thud echoed behind him. He turned. Nothing there. He turned back. The sarcophagus lid was slightly open now. He hadn't touched it, but something inside had moved, and from the crack, something slithered out. Not a snake, not a ghost, but a tail, covered in black fur, and slowly a paw followed. Then claws. Then eyes. Eyes he had seen before. Golden, unblinking. The cat had followed him down. But it wasn't small anymore. It was the size of a tiger. No larger. It smiled. And then it spoke not with a voice, but inside his head. You have awakened the blood. You are the last. You will serve. Chernang screamed. But his voice didn't echo. It was swallowed whole. By the dark. The tomb door opens, and the bleeding black cat. It was said that the tomb of Kim Kwan had never been opened. Not by kings, not by thieves, not even by time. But now, under the dim flicker of his dying lantern, Trương Tam stood frozen, as the heavy stone door sealed for what could have been centuries groaned, then slid open on its own. He hadn't pushed it. He hadn't touched it. But something had awakened inside. The air that rushed out was colder than ice. Thick. Heavy. It hit him like a wall, reeking of iron. Damp earth and something else. Something metallic, like blood. He tried to step back, but his feet wouldn't move. It wasn't fear holding him, it was the sense that something was watching. And then he saw it. At the center of the doorway, seated calmly like it had always belonged there, was a black cat. But this wasn't the one from before. This one was larger, the size of a small dogend. Its fur glistened with wetness. At first Chernang thought it was the rain. But then, under the flickering lantern light, he saw drips falling from its paws. Red, thick, fresh. Blood. The cat was bleeding. No, not bleeding. It was soaked in blood as if it had just crawled out of something dead. Its golden eyes locked with his, unblinking, unmoving. A low, guttural growl rose from its throat, not like a hiss, not like any feline sound he knew. It was something deeper, almost human. Chernang stumbled backward, heart pounding. What are you?" he whispered. The cat blinked slowly, and then it did something that chilled him to the marrow. It smiled. The cat does not move. The doorway to Kim Kwan remained wide open. Darkness beyond it pulsed like a living thing. But the cat did not enter. It simply sat, as though guarding the entrance, like an ancient sentinel. Chernang wanted to run. His instincts screamed it. But curiosity mixed with that strange connection he felt in the shrine kept him rooted. He studied the cat again. There was something unnatural about its body, not just the blood, not just the way it stared without blinking. No, its shadow was wrong. The lantern light behind it should have cast a single shadow, stretching forward. Instead, its shadow split into three, each one curled in a different direction, like tendrils. One of them even twitched. Chernang backed away another step, unsure whether to scream or pray. The cat's tail flicked once, and then, without sound, it turned around and walked into the tomb. The moment it crossed the threshold, the walls inside began to light upon their own as torches flared to life one by one, casting long shadows down a narrow corridor. Chernang's hands trembled as he lifted the lantern. "Just a tomb," he whispered to himself. "Just old stone. Maybe treasure. Maybe history." But deep down he knew this was no ordinary tomb, and that was no ordinary cat. The corridor of eyes. As he stepped into the tomb, the air grew even colder. The walls were damp, covered in moss and carvings. But the strangest thing was this. Every inch of stone was filled with cat imagery. Some were majesty-etched like royalty. Others twisted, some with 3 eyes, some with human limbs. Some curled around skeletons. Most disturbing were the eyes. Dozens of cat eyes carved into the walls, but they didn't feel still. They felt like they were following him. He passed one wall that depicted a ritual. A line of robed figures bowing before a colossal feline beast with 9 tails. At its feet, piles of bone shumen, unmistakably. Chernang tried not to look too closely. The black cat had disappeared down the corridor, but its paw prints remained bloody, trailing forward, staining the stone path. He followed them. The whispering room. The corridor ended at a round chamber, with a high ceiling lost in darkness. The walls here were smoother, less worn, and the sound. It was faint at first, like wind. Then it grew louder. Whispers. Hundreds of them, layered. Male, female, old, childlike. Some cried, some laughed, some chanted words he didn't understand. It felt like walking into a room full of ghosts. In the center was a shallow stone basin, filled with a dark liquid that shimmered like oil. But when Chernang approached, he saw his reflection inside, and froze. It was not his face. It looked like him, but wrong. The skin was sagging, the eyes cat-like, the smile too wide, and from the corners of its mouth blood. He stepped back in horror, but the reflection did not move with him. It smiled wider, and then opened its mouth, whispering a single word in his voice. "Return." Chernang dropped the lantern. The glass shattered. The flame sputtered. But the room did not go dark. Instead, the walls began to glow, lines and symbols lighting up like veins, pulsing red. From behind him came the sound of footsteps, but not human. Soft, padded, slow. The cat returns. The black cat reappeared, but now it was changed. It was no longer wet, no longer dripping blood. Instead, its fur glowed faintly with a deep red shimmer, like embers under coal. And around its neck was a thin cord with a single human finger bone hanging from it like a charm. The cat walked to the basin, stared into it, and let out a single, soft meow. Immediately, the reflection vanished. The basin's surface went still. Then the floor began to tremble. Stone grated against stone, and slowly from the far wall a panel slid open, revealing a hidden stairway going deeper into the earth. Trnang looked down it, his skin crawling. A heat radiated from below it, warm like fire, but oppressive like breath from a monstrous mouth. The cat turned to him. Its golden eyes said only one thing: down. The decision of descent. No one's forced me to do anything, Trnang muttered. I came here on my own. I wanted to find the truth. I wanted to bring honor to my name. But even as he said it, he felt the lie. He hadn't come for honor. He came for greed, for legacy, for something to fill the hole inside him. Now, the hole felt bottomless. Still, he stepped forward. The cat walked beside him. Together, they descended. The air grew hotter with each step. The walls here were different, no longer stone, but black obsidian, smooth and polished, reflecting twisted versions of him as he passed. One reflection showed him with 9 tails, another with his face split open, eyes glowing yellow. He stopped looking. At the bottom of the stairs stood a massive door carved from dark wood, embedded with bones. In its center, a golden eye, not carved, real, blinking. It looked at Trnang. Then the eye closed, and the door opened. The final chamber. The chamber inside was vast, cavernous, lined with statues of cats, each one different, grotesque in its own way. One had wings, another had a human face. One was made entirely of bones. In the center, raised on a dais, was a sarcophagus, gold ancient, but it pulsed with a heartbeat. Trnang approached slowly. The black cat leapt up first, circling the sarcophagus once. Before laying down at its foot like a guardian, he reached out his hand. Just before he touched the lid, it moved. Cracks formed down the center. A light spilled out from within it, hot, blinding. And from inside, a voice echoed not from mouth, but from soul. You have returned. The blood remembers. The line awakens. You are no longer man. You are vessel. Trnang screamed. But the cat did not move, and the sarcophagus began to open. Blood thread the severed hand. The stench of mold and old death hung thick in the air. As Trnang stepped deeper into the Kim Kwan tomb, the heavy stone door behind him had sealed shut with a dull thud, trapping him inside. The only light came from his cheap flashlight, flickering weakly, its beam swallowed quickly by the damp darkness ahead. His heart thumped harder with each step, echoing in his ears like a distant drumbeat of doom. The narrow hallway sloped downward, and strange carvings lined the walls, twisted figures, faceless spirits, and scenes of what looked like ancient rituals. They pulsed in and out of view under the wavering light. Trnang had nothing to lose. He had always lived on the edge, a drifter, a thief, a ghost among the living. But here, in this place, even he felt small, fragile. The tomb whispered to him, not in words, but in feelings, cold dread sliding under his skin like the slow crawl of an insect. Then he saw it, a single red thread. It hung in the middle of the passage, not tied to anything, just suspended in the air. It wasn't just red, it was a deep, blood-soaked crimson, glistening slightly as though wet. It swayed gently, although there was no wind. Trnang stopped, staring at it. His instinct screamed at him to turn around. But something pulled him closer, curiosity, perhaps, or the madness that loneliness breeds. He raised his hand and brushed the thread with his fingertips. The world shifted. In an instant, the walls seemed to bleed. The carvings moved. The floor beneath him pulsed like flesh. And then, a hand. It shot out from the darkness behind the thread, pale and withered. Its skin stretched tight over bone. It had only 4 fingers, one was missing. The jagged stump oozed black fluid, and its nails were yellowed, cracked, and long like claws. The hand grabbed his shoulder. Trnang screamed, the sound echoing endlessly in the tomb. He stumbled back, flashlight tumbling from his grip and rolling to a stop against the wall. The beam flickered across the floor, showing long drag marks and something else, another red thread stretching further down the corridor, vanishing into the shadows. His shoulder burned. Through the torn fabric of his shirt, he could feel the skin ripped open. Wet and raw, the mark wasn't just a scratch. It pulsed like something had been left behind, something alive. Gasping for breath, he snatched the flashlight and turned it wildly in every direction. But the hand was gone. No blood, no trace. Yet the red thread remained. And now there were more of them, strands of blood thread hanging all along the corridor, like a forest of veins suspended in the air. Some twitched when he passed, others recoiled as if afraid of him, but most just hovered, still and waiting. He forced himself forward. The passage opened into a large chamber, its ceiling lost in the dark above. In the center stood a stone altar, and behind it, a statue half crumbled, but unmistakably feline. A cat, or something that once resembled a cat, twisted with human features, long limbs, fanged mouth, and hollow eyes. Trnang approached, drawn by the faint hum in the air, not a sound, but a vibration, like the air itself was buzzing. On the altar lay an object, a small wooden box, old but undamaged. Strange symbols were etched along its surface, and a faint red stain marked one corner. Trnang reached for it but hesitated. Then, without warning, the statue's head turned. Just slightly, just enough. Its eyes, empty as they were, now stared straight at him. Trnang froze. He hadn't imagined it. He knew he hadn't. Something scraped behind him, turning quickly. He raised the flashlight just in time to catch a fleeting glimpse of movement. A shadow disappearing into the wall, melting into it, like smoke into cracks. Then came the purring, low, guttural, not like any cat he had ever heard. It echoed through the chamber, close but everywhere at once. The air grew heavier, the buzzing stronger. The blood threads began to tremble, some twisting together, forming strange shapes, knots, loops, even what looked like faces. Trnang's grip tightened around the box. Whatever was happening, this object was at the center of it. But before he could move, he felt it again. A touch, cold or sharp. Another hand, the hand slid across his neck. He turned violently, lashing out, but hit nothing. Only air. Still, his neck stung. Looking down, he saw a single drop of blood fall onto the box. It was his. As it touched the surface, the box snapped open. Inside was a single object, a black coin, ancient, almost stone-like in appearance. On its surface, an engraving, a cat's eye. The hum stopped. Everything went still. The purring ceased. Even the blood threads became motionless. Trnang stared at the coin. His fingers trembled as he picked it up, and then silence shattered. From every corner of the chamber, figures emerged. Thin, pale, hollow-eyed. Each one had a hand with a missing finger. Some crawled, others slithered, but all of them reached for him. Panicking, Trnang stuffed the coin into his pocket and ran. Darting back through the forest of threads, the figures followed, moaning softly, whispering in a language he didn't understand. As he reached the corridor's end, the stone door remained shut. He slammed into it, pounding with his fists. Open, open, damn it. Behind him, the whispers grew louder. He looked back. The figures were gone. Only the cat statue stood at the end of the corridor now, closer than before. Much closer. It blinked. Once. Then the door behind Trnang creaked. It slowly slid open. Without looking back again, he bolted through and didn't stop until he collapsed outside the tomb. Chest heaving, face soaked in sweat. The night was quiet. The stars stared coldly down at him. But something was different. The wound on his shoulder had stopped bleeding, but the skin around it was now marked with a strange, red symbol, the same one etched on the coin. And in the far distance, from deep inside the tomb, a meow echoed. Soft, mocking, human. The bloodline curse and the secret of Kim Kwan. Trnang stared at the ancient stone tablet, his breath caught in his throat. The engraving was faint from centuries of erosion, but he could still make out the characters, Trnangja Tc Hyatt Mokbi Nuyan. His surname. Below the title were rows of smaller script, so old and worn that he had to crouch close and run his fingers lightly across the grooves to read them. The dim light of his flashlight flickered as if disturbed by something unseen. Just then, a gust of cold air swept through the crypt, and the flame from his backup oil lamp danced violently. He squinted and read aloud. Here lies the Trnang bloodline sealed beneath the bones of betrayal. Those who carry the name shall never know peace. Those who awaken the slumber shall feed the curse. The thief of blood shall become blood for the cat. He froze. It didn't make sense. It had never heard of any ancient tomb belonging to his ancestors. His parents had always been secretive about their past. He knew his surname, of course, but they never spoke of any Kim Kwan or a bloodline curse. And yet here, buried deep beneath an overgrown cemetery, lay a stone slab tying him by name and blood to a tragedy centuries old. The thief of blood shall become blood for the cat. What does that even mean? Trnang muttered, but his voice sounded small and hollow within the ancient chamber. Suddenly, he remembered the red string, still sticky, dangling from his hand. Was that what they meant by blood? And the cat, the black cat with bleeding eyes that had stared at him so intently outside the tomb? He glanced behind him. The corridor stretched long and narrow, empty as far as his flashlight reached. Still, he felt watched, as though the stone walls themselves were breathing, listening. Trnang turned back to the slab, determined to learn more. He carefully brushed away moss and grime from the base of the stone, and uncovered a carved diagram, an intricate tree of names branching out from a central symbol that looked eerily like a coffin encased in 9 protective seals. Each seal bore an animal sigil. He recognized Mostak's, dragon, monkey, phoenix, but the final one, at the bottom near the roots of the tree, was a cat with glowing red eyes. That same feline shape was carved into the floor, just beside the altar. It wasn't coincidence. He followed the diagram's markings and noticed that one of the branches had been crudely hacked off. A jagged gouge scarred the surface, as if someone had tried to erase a name. Above it, the characters read, Trnang Hyatt DK Fntlt, Trnang Blood Trader. Was this the cause of the curse? A betrayal within the family? Trnang took out his notebook and quickly sketched the diagram. As he did, he heard a faint chimney, a soft metallic echo, like the sound of a bell from deep underground. He paused, listening. It came again. Ching, ching, ching. He stood and followed the sound deeper into the crypt. Passing mummified remains wrapped in decaying silks, the air grew colder with each step, and the walls narrowed, the ceiling pressing lower. The cat carvings became more frequent, etched onto pillars, painted in faded red ink, even stitched into the burial shrouds. Finally, he entered a round chamber. In the center was a circular platform, surrounded by shallow water. The bell sound came from above. A small bronze wind chime hung from a chain embedded in the ceiling, gently swaying, though no wind stirred. But it was what lay on the platform that stopped his breath. A coffin, made of solid gold, sealed tight with black wax at the corners, chains wrapped around it, nailed into the ground. Symbols of protection circled it, but most had faded. At the foot of the coffin stood another stone smaller, newer. It bore one word, Maucat. As he approached, the temperature plummeted. Ice crystals formed along the coffin's base. His breath fogged. Chernang reached out hesitantly, instinctively, and touched the chain. Instant pain. A sharp sting surged through his fingers, up his arm, burning hot like acid. He recoiled with a cry, his hand throbbing. Behind him, a soft meow echoed. He turned. The black cat sat at the chamber's edge, eyes locked on him. Blood dripped from its left socket. Its tail swayed slowly. Then it stood, and without a sound, walked on water, circling the platform. Chernang backed away, heart pounding. This isn't real. I'm hallucinating, he said aloud, voice shaking. The cat paused, tilted its head, then spoke, its voice not from its mouth but vibrating in his skull. You woke them. Chernang froze. What are you? We are the guard, the debt, the hunger. The cat's bleeding. I began to pulse, like a beating heart. One of your blood spilled the sacred seal. One betrayed the pact. Now you return to complete what was begun. I didn't do anything. I'm just trying to survive. Survival has a price. Blood for blood. Suddenly, the golden coffin trembled. The chains rattled violently. Cracks spread along the black wax seals. From inside came a muffled gasp, like someone waking from a nightmare. No, Chernang whispered, don't. But it was too late. The final seal on the lid split open, and a hiss of cold air burst out. A hand reached up, pale, missing a finger, wrapped in crimson silk. The cat hissed, crouching low. The hand grasped the chain and pulled. With an eerie groan, the lid slid off just enough for Chernang to see. A face identical to his, but rotted, ancient. One eye open, the other sealed by a burn scar. Its mouth twisted in pain and hatred. The corpse spoke. You have my blood. Chernang stumbled backward, falling to the ground, flashlight skidding across the wet stone. No, this isn't real. This can't be happening. The cat leaped onto the coffin, placing itself between Chernang and the corpse. It hissed louder, its fur bristling, forming strange sigils in the air with its tail. The corpse shrieked, reaching out. Suddenly, the walls began to collapse. Rocks tumbled. Dust poured from the ceiling. Run! The voice came from the cat, and Chernang didn't hesitate. He grabbed his flashlight, sprinted back through the corridor as the chamber behind him crumbled. The screeching corpse wailed, echoing in his ears, louder and louder until it abruptly cut off, sealed behind stone once more. When he finally burst through the tomb entrance and into the cold night air, he collapsed to his knees, gasping. The forest was silent, but the curse was not broken. On his shoulder, where the blood thread had touched him, a faint mark began to glow, a crimson cat's paw. And far behind him, buried under tons of ancient stone, something waited, watching, breathing, remembering, soul-guiding. Cat, the face that is no longer mine. The tomb was behind him now. Chernang staggered out into the dying daylight, every breath sharp and cold. His shoulders still throbbed where the mutilated hand had clawed him. The wound oddly slow to clot despite the pressure he'd wrapped it in. The weight of the tomb's secret, his own cursed lineage, clung to him like damp soil. He limped down the mountain path, guided only by the pale red hue of the setting sun and the increasingly erratic twitch in his injured arm. Around him, the wind whispered through the reeds and trees like voices too faint to understand. The silence was never complete. He reached a stagnant pond, one he had passed earlier that day. Now, it felt different. Still, quiet, ominous. As he bent over to rinse his hands, his reflection shimmered across the black water's surface. And what he saw made him freeze. The face in the pond was not his. It had his shape, Yes, the high cheekbones and narrow jaw, but thick black fur was sprouting from under the skin, coarse and unnatural. His eyes, no, its eyes had become vertical slits, yellow-green, like a predator's. His mouth trembled open in horror, and the reflection mimicked him, but with a grin that stretched afar, revealing needle-thin fangs. Trnang reeled back, falling onto his elbows. His breath caught in his throat. He blinked once, twice. The reflection returned to normal. But the damage was done. He pressed a trembling hand to his cheek. Skin, just skin. Still, the feeling lingered, as if something inside him had shifted or awoken. Suddenly, the underbrush rustled. A single black cat stepped out, eyes locked on him, then another, and another. In minutes, they were everywhere. More than a dozen cats, all black as coal, encircled him in a silent formation. Not one made a sound. They just stared, tails twitching ever so slightly, unblinking and eerily calm. Some were mangy, others elegant, but all of them had that same stare, reverent, expectant. "Get away," Trnang muttered, scrambling to his feet. The cats didn't move. Instead, they bowed their heads like monks before an altar. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. The moment stretched too long. He turned and fled. The cats did not chase, they merely watched. The cats did not chase, they merely watched. That night, Trnang tried to sleep in the abandoned Mieu where this all began. The once familiar smell of moss and burnt incense now felt suffocating. He wrapped his wound tighter, heart pounding, ears straining for any whisper of claws on stone. But sleep came, eventually, and so did the dreams. In them, he wandered endless underground corridors lined with cat skulls, their empty eye sockets glowing faintly red. Statues of feline gods loomed over him, some with human torsos, others with writhing tails for limbs. A voice kept whispering, low and hollow, "Return to the blood, return to the blood." When he awoke, his pillow was soaked with sweat. His hands were clawed at his own neck. And outside the Mieu, sitting neatly in a circle, were the cats again. This time, there were dozens. This time, there were dozens. Trnang no longer knew how many days had passed since he entered the tomb. Time blurred, fragmented by nightmares and waking hallucinations. Each time he looked at a mirror or a pool of water, his reflection was increasingly alien. The whiskers, the fur, the eyes, all subtle changes, but real. He stopped looking. Worse, he began to hear things. Voices, not from the living but from the cats. Not speaking aloud, but speaking into him. At first, he thought he was going insane, but their messages were oddly specific. They told him where to dig and he'd find bones. They guided him to a forgotten shrine behind a collapsed temple wall. Inside, he found offerings, teeth, claws, and a dried heart wrapped in red silk. One night, in a trance-like state, he followed them into the forest. They moved silently through the trees, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The deeper they led him, the more his body betrayed him. His nails thickened. His pupils remained slits, even in bright light. His sense of smell became unbearably sharp. He could detect rotting flesh beneath tree roots, the scent of old blood in the dirt, and hunger, a strange hunger, something beyond food. They led him to an ancient banyan tree, its roots twisted like serpents around a stone altar. There, a single, emaciated black cat sat atop the altar. Its fur was patchy, its skin nearly translucent, but its eyes golden, wise, eternal, stared directly into his soul. The others bowed to it. Trnang, without knowing why, did the same. The cat blinked slowly and opened its mouth. A raspy, human-like voice emerged from nowhere and everywhere. "You carry the blood," it said. Trnang's lips trembled. What am I becoming? The vessel, said the voice. For what? He asked. For what was left unfinished. For what was left unfinished. In a fevered haze, Trnang stumbled back to the Mieu, clutching his arms to stop them from shaking. He collapsed beside the altar and dry heaved until bile burned his throat. That night, the final vision came. He stood in the tomb once more, only this time it was vibrant alive. Torches flickered. Silk banners lined the walls. Statues of feline warriors glared down at him. In the center, a massive coffin of black stone gleamed. Inside, something pulsed. He approached it. The lid began to slide open on its own. And there, lying within, was himself. But older, hair matted, nails curved like claws, face fully feline. The corpse opened its eyes. You will finish the blood oath, it hissed. Then everything went dark. Then everything went dark. He woke up gasping, on the floor of the Mieu. His mouth tasted like iron, blood. He reached up, and his fingers came away red. No, not from his lips. From his teeth. They had grown, sharpened. One had pierced the inside of his cheek. The cats were waiting at the doorway, silent, watching. They began to walk away single file. And this time, Trnang followed without hesitation. His reflection had changed, but so had he. The old Trnang the disfigured, lost man who stumbled into a cursed grave was fading. Something older, deeper was waking up inside him. The cats had chosen, and he was no longer just human. Trnang Tiu Bayan the fated twin. Trnang couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the faces of cats stared back at him, dozens of them black, scarred, ancient. Some had glowing eyes, others bled from their mouths. But worse than the dreams was his reflection. The face in the mirror was no longer his. Where his sunken, weathered features used to be, there was now a hybrid, a grotesque blend of man and feline. Fur crept from under his skin. Dark whiskers sprouted from his cheeks, and his pupils slitted like those of a predator stalking in the night. He blinked, it vanished, but the changes were real. Under his shirt, faint patches of black hair had begun growing along his spine. His senses were sharper, could hear distant rustling, detect the faint scent of incense or decay from across streets. Worse still, the cats still followed him, not aggressively, reverently, as if he were something sacred or cursed. On the third night, after his descent into the tomb, Trnang wandered into an abandoned courtyard on the outskirts of the old town. The moon glowed orange, hidden behind drifting clouds. Crickets ceased their singing. The wind felt thick. He had come here without reason. His legs led him. His mind fogged over. In the middle of the yard stood a man, lighting a bundle of dried herbs over a cracked ceramic bowl. The smoke curled unnatural shapes in the air, a slashing claw, a dripping fang, a feline eye. Trnang froze. The man turned to him, as if expecting him all along. "You came," he said quietly. His voice had a strange cadence, half resigned, half relieved. Trnang looked closer. The man was about his age, slightly younger, sharp features, a long scar cutting across his chin. But most jarring of all, looked eerily familiar. "Who are you?" Trnang asked. "I'm Trnang Tiu Bayan," the man said. "I think we're family." The name hit him like a slap. Trnang Tiu Bayan, a name he had come across once in a dusty record book, years ago, when he traced his ancestral roots. One of the few survivors of the Trnang clan massacre that history had tried to forget. "You're from the same line?" Tiu Bayan nodded. "The cursed bloodline. You saw the tomb, didn't you? Kim Kwan?" Trnang slowly nodded. "And the cat, the red thread, the stone tablet. It said," He who steals the blood shall become blood for the cat. Tiu Bayan sighed and sat cross-legged on the cracked stone ground. It wasn't meant to be opened. That tomb was sealed for a reason. Every few decades, someone from our bloodline feels drawn back to it. Always ends badly. Always ends with claws. Chernang sat across from him, heart pounding. You mean, this happened to others? Yes, my grandfather was the last one before me. Before he clawed his own eyes out and burned himself alive in the temple down the road. Tiu Bayan said it like he had repeated the tale 1,000 times. I've spent my whole life learning about the curse, trying to survive it. Until you. You're the first one I've met. Who carries it too? Chernang didn't speak. His hand instinctively went to the spot on his shoulder where the hand-missing fingers had. Scratch him. Tiu Bayan noticed. It marked you, didn't it? The guardian. That thing, it came from the shadows, Chernang murmured. I couldn't see its face. But the scent of blood, it was so strong. Tiu Bayan nodded. It always marks one. That mark starts the change. The change? Chernang asked, dread twisting his stomach. You've already seen it. Your reflection. The fur. The cat's treating you like something divine. It's not just in your head. You're becoming one of them. A long silence stretched. Crickets resumed their chirping, but it felt mocking now. But why? Why us? Chernang whispered. Tiu Bayan looked toward the sky. Because centuries ago, our ancestor stole something. He wasn't just a tomb keeper, was a blood sorcerer. He harvested the blood of sacred cats for rituals. It said he drank their essence to gain long life. But the cats, they're not just animals. Some are vessels, spirits, guardians of the afterlife. And they cursed us for it. They bound our blood to theirs. And now, when the cycle returns, one of us is pulled back, offered as penance. Sometimes it's one, sometimes more. But we never escape. Chernang stared at his hands, as if waiting to see for a sprout from beneath the skin. So we're just doomed. No, Tiu Bayan said quietly. We have one chance. I think I found something. He pulled a weathered scroll from a leather pouch and unrolled it. Strange symbols covered it, drawn in red ink or dried blood. This is part of the final rite, Tiu Bayan explained. It's a severance ritual, done at the hour of hollow moon, but it requires two bearers of the curse, two vessels marked by the blood thread. Chernang stared at the scroll, suddenly feeling the weight of destiny bearing down on him. You're saying we do this together, or not at all? Tiu Bayan nodded. And the cost will be high. We'll have to return to the tomb, to the heart chamber. That's where it sleeps. Chernang asked, even though he already feared the answer. The original cat, the one our ancestor bled dry and tried to bind his soul to, it still lingers. You saw a fragment when you entered. That bleeding cat, just a sentinel, the true one. It's buried alive in the stone beneath. Chernang swallowed hard. How do we kill something that isn't alive? We don't kill it, Tiu Bayan said. We offer ourselves in the rite, trick it, give it a vessel of false blood, break the chain, but the ritual requires sacrifice. Chernang looked into the fire. The smoke was now rising in the shape of a feline skull. The flames flickered strangely, casting long shadows. I don't want to become a monster, Chernang whispered. Then be willing to bleed like a man, Tiu Bayan answered. Silence returned. The fire cracked. From the nearby alley, faint mewing echoed high hollow. Otherworldly. The cats had returned. They circled the courtyard again, slow and silent. They didn't hiss, didn't threaten. They sat, watching, like judges before a trial. They know we've chosen, Tiu Bayan said, standing. They're waiting. For what? For us to make the journey back. Chernang looked at the scroll again, then at the sky. The clouds had parted. revealing the moon bloated and dull, hanging like a rotten eye in the heavens. Tomorrow, they would return to Kim Kwan. Tomorrow, they would face the ghost cat that had haunted their bloodline for centuries. And maybe, just maybe, they could end it. Blood cat ritual the night of the blood moon. That night, the moon rose, swollen and red as a bleeding eye. It bathed the jungle in a sickly, crimson glow. Every tree, every leaf, and every rock in the ruined land of Kim Kwan seemed to bleed under its touch. Turnang and Tiu Bayan crouched beside a stone altar buried under vines, sweat beading on their foreheads, not from heat, but from dread. "This is it," Tiu Bayan whispered, "the place of offering." The altar was no larger than a dining table. Its surface was etched with claw marks and ancient writing that shimmered faintly under the red moonlight. Surrounding it were broken statuettes, all cats, some headless, others smiling with fangs. The jungle fell unnaturally quiet, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Tiu Bayan turned to Turnang, his expression grim. "You still want to go through with this?" Tring's eyes burned with both fear and resolve. "If this curse continues, I won't be myself much longer. My face, it's not even mine anymore. I see cats when I sleep. I cough up fur. I hear purring in silence." He lifted the collar of his shirt. Black veins ran like cracks across his shoulder, branching from the scratch left by the hand in the tomb. The curse was spreading. Tiu Bayan looked away. "We both carry it. The blood of the Trinang clan was never meant to survive." According to Tiu Bayan, the blood Tặc Miêu was the guardian of the curse, not just a ghost, but a creature of ancient spirit and flesh, said to live in the deepest cavern beneath Kim Kwan. It had grown monstrous from feeding on the guilt, fear, and pain of Tring's ancestors, and it was cunning, impossible to kill through ordinary means. Only by deceiving it, Tiu Bayan said. "Can we trap it? Not fight, not kill, trick." "How do you deceive something like that?" Turnang asked. Tiu Bayan produced an old scroll. On it, faded ink illustrated a ritual. One man must offer himself as bait, soaked in cursed blood, while the other casts a binding using sacred hair from the tomb's red thread Hayat. The ceremony had to be completed during a Hayat Gita blood moonlight tonight. "Who's the bait?" Turnang asked, though he already knew the answer. "I am," Tiu Bayan said. "You still have part of the red thread, right?" Turnang nodded. It was wrapped around his wrist like a charm, soaked in dried blood from the time he'd been clawed. "Then remember," Tiu Bayan said, pressing a small silver bell into Tring's palm. "If I fail to hold it, ring this 3 times. That's your cue to finish it. Don't hesitate." They lit the incense. Tiu Bayan removed his shirt and smeared his chest with ash mixed with blood bothers. Then he stepped onto the altar and sat cross-legged. The jungle trembled as if the trees had suddenly grown aware of what was happening. The moment the final chant left Tring's lips, the ground split with a low, guttural growl. From the shadows emerged a pair of glowing green eyes. Then came the foreman, impossibly large black cat, tall as a calf, with skin like oiled leather. Its fur shimmered like wet ink, and its tail split into 3 wisps that twitched independently. Taq Miêu. Its face was feline, but distorted, human-like in its expressions, with a grin that stretched far too wide. It moved not with the bounce of a predator, but with the glide of a spirit. Its paws made no sound, yet wherever it stepped, the ground wilted. It stopped at the edge of the altar, staring at Tiu Bayan. Then, slowly, it bowed its head. Tring's breath caught. The creature wasn't attacking, it was acknowledging, as if recognizing one of its own. Tiu Bayan didn't flinch. "I am Turnang Tiu Bayan," he said, voice steady. "Of the blood you cursed, of the clan you shattered, I offer myself in trade for the last." The Taq Miêu purred, a deep, vibrating sound like drums in a distant war. Its eyes narrowed as it circled the altar. Then it leapt. Tiubayan screamed as claws raked across his chest, slicing skin. Blood spilled onto the stone. The cat licked it eagerly, its tail writhing like snakes in ecstasy. But it didn't kill him. Not yet. It fed. Chernang stepped forward, holding the red thread in one hand and the bell in the other. His hands trembled. This is it. But before he could chant the final words, something cold and sharp stabbed into his mind like a memory that wasn't his. He saw flashes of a young woman, eyes wide in terror, being dragged by black cats into a pit. Another flash off a man tied to the altar, screaming as cats poured over him like a wave. Then a final imagery, a baby, his face too familiar, wrapped in red cloth, left outside the tomb. It was him. No, Chernang whispered. Was I born here? The Hayat Mieu turned toward him, blood dripping from its jaw, its green eyes widened. Recognition. Tiubayan gasped, barely able to speak. Chernang, your mother was the offering. You were born to replace me. Chernang staggered. What are you saying? Tiubayan's voice was faint. You weren't cursed. You were chosen. Raised outside by chance. That's why the curse didn't take root until you returned. The Hayat Mieu crouched, preparing to leap not at Tiubayan, but at Chernang. Everything froze. Then Chernang rang the balance. The cat flinched. Twice. The altar began to glow, symbols lighting up like fireflies. Third time. The red thread in Tring's hand ignited. As it burned, the flames formed the shape of a giant feline cage. The Hayat Mieu screeched its sound not just heard, but felt like knives in the bones. It twisted and clawed, but the fire snared its limbs. Tiubayan screamed one final time, arms outstretched, his blood boiling on the altar as if consumed by unseen flames. The creature was trapped, howling, shrieking. Then, with one final pained growl, it exploded into a puff of smoke, leaving only a claw and a trail of blackened paw prints that faded into ash. Silence. Chernang fell to his knees. Tiubayan lay motionless, his face calm, as if finally released from a lifetime of nightmares. The moon began to fade, from red to pale white. The jungle exhaled, and somewhere nearby, a single cat meowed. Shadow cat turns on its master, the one who pleaded becomes the prey. The wind howled like a chorus of whispering souls as the full moon reached its peak in the sky. Crimson light bled through the clouds, casting a sickly red hue over the ground where Chernang and Tiubayan stood. Before them, deep in the jungle ruins, lay the altar of Kim Kwan weathered stone, cracked but still bearing the ancient bloodstains of forgotten rites. Chernang gripped the rusted dagger tightly, his palms sweaty. Beside him, Tiubayan unwrapped a cloth bundle to reveal the bones of a long-dead feline, ancestor symbolic bait, for summoning the Hayat Mieu, the blood cat. Once the moon turns red, the veil thins, Tiubayan murmured, drawing chalk symbols on the stone. Its hunger will be great tonight. Tring's heart pounded. He had seen the Hayat Mieu once, just once. Glowing eyes in the crypt, the glint of red fur, a shadow that moved with eerie precision. The cat was no ordinary creature. It radiated an aura of death, and yet it moved like a god. Are you sure this will work? Chernang asked, unsure if he was more afraid of the ritual failing or succeeding. Tiubayan didn't answer. His eyes had turned glassy, his mouth whispering in an old dialect even Chernang didn't recognize. The flames of the torches began to flicker violently, and then a sound cut through the jungle, a low, throaty growl, not from a throat of flesh and blood, but something older, something stitched from shadows. It came from the black heart of the jungle, The hired Mieu stepped into the clearing. It was enormous, feline in shape, but with skin that shimmered like wet ink. Its eyes burned with twin flames, and around its body, the mist thickened. Writhing like worms in the air, its steps made no sound. Yet each movement felt like it echoed through bone. Trnang instinctively stepped back. Tiu Bayan remained frozen, arms raised. "O Ancient One," Tiu Bayan chanted, "we offer you what was stolen, your blood returned. In return, grant us freedom from your wrath. Break the curse upon the Trnang bloodline." For a moment, the cat simply stared. Then, as if amused, it let out a slow, echoing purr. Tiu Bayan took that as a sign. He pulled a curved knife from his belt and slashed across his palm. Blood poured onto the altar. "I offer part of myself." The cat tilted its head. Then Tiu Bayan did something Trnang wasn't prepared for, stabbed the blade into his own side. Just under the ribs, blood gushed, splashing the stone and soaking the dirt. The cat stepped closer, lowering its head, sniffing the offering. Tiu Bayan dropped to his knees, panting but smiling. Trnang watched in horror. The cat paused. Then it reared back and opened its jaws wider than any natural animal should be able to. From its mouth poured a dark mist, swirling like a cyclone. It wrapped around Tiu Bayan's body, lifting him into the air. No, Tiu Bayan gasped. This wasn't part of deal. The cat didn't answer. The mist darkened, thickening into tendrils that pierced Tiu Bayan's chest, drawing something out, not just blood, but light, soul. Tiu Bayan screamed. His face twisted, eyes bulging as his very essence was pulled from his body. He flailed, but his limbs went limp. Within seconds, his body crumbled like dried leaves, collapsing into dust. The hired Mieu turned its head toward Trnang. "Run!" The instinct exploded through Trnang's body. He turned and bolted into the jungle, branches whipping against his skin, the sound of something massive and silent behind him. The cat was chasing, but it made no noise, just the oppressive feeling of breath on his neck, of death gaining ground. He ran until his legs buckled. He tumbled down a slope, landing hard against a moss-covered stone. His chest heaved. Every breath was a scream. He looked back, nothing, just the jungle. No sign of the cat, but the silence felt wrong. He pushed himself up, stumbling through the trees until he found a small, dry cave nestled beneath some rocks. He crawled inside, curling into a ball, panting like a hunted animal. For a long time, there was nothing, just his breathing, his heartbeat. Then, a soft meow. He jerked upright. At the cave's mouth stood a small black cat, normal-sized, yellow eyes, unblinking. Trnang backed up. It stepped in slowly, paw by paw. "No," he whispered, "not again." But the cat did not attack. It sat down, staring at him, watching. Then it spoke, not with words, but directly into his mind, a voice both female and ancient. "You saw what he offered, but what will you give?" Trnang's skin went cold. "I didn't agree to any of this. You carry the blood of thieves. Your ancestors stole from the sacred tombs. My children died by their hands. The curse will not lift without blood." Trnang shook his head. "I didn't do anything." The cat's pupils narrowed. The cave darkened. "Yet you live because they died. Blood debts transcend time." Trnang wanted to scream. He wanted to run. But something inside him cracked. Perhaps it was the truth he couldn't deny any longer. Perhaps it was guilt. Or perhaps acceptance. He bowed his head. "What do you want from me?" The cat moved closer. Its fur shimmered in the dim light. "Return what was taken. Dig where the moon touches the altar. Give back the stolen bones. Then, and only then, may the curse shift." "Shift?" Trnang asked. "Not lift." The cat's eyes glowed. Blood cannot be erased, only redirected. And just like that it vanished. The cave was empty, no paw prints, no scent, nothing. Only silence. By morning, Trnang stumbled back to the clearing. Tiu Bian's body was gone and no bones, no blood, no trace. The altar was clean, almost too clean. The air around it shimmered with an unseen force. But Trnang remembered the voice. Where the moon touches the altar. He waited until nightfall. When the moon rose, it cast a perfect silver beam that struck the base of the altar. Trnang picked up a jagged stone and began digging. Hours passed. Dirt gave way to something harder. Wood. Rotting wood. A coffin. Inside lay ancient remains. Crumbling bones wrapped in scraps of cloth marked with the Trnang family crest. Jewelry still clung to the skeletal fingers. He recognized them, trinkets passed down his bloodline. Stolen, he whispered. He removed each piece carefully and set them outside the tomb. Then, digging deeper, he found something buried beneath the Bonessa's smaller box, sealed with wax and twine. He opened it. Inside lay a perfectly preserved mummified cat. Red fur, sharp teeth, eyes closed. The Hyatt Mieu. He did not know how, but the creature's essence was bound here. He stood over the altar, the box in hand. I return what was taken. Let the dead rest. Let the blood stop. Wind rose. The jungle moaned. The mummy crumbled before his eyes, turning to dust. A single cat's cry echoed through the trees. Then silence. And this time it felt final. But Trnang knew the curse wasn't broken. Only past. He left Kim Kwan, not feeling free but different. Something in him had changed. He caught his reflection in a puddle days later. Eyes golden, faint fur on his cheeks. He was no longer fully human. The curse had shifted, as promised, but it lived on in him. The grave is gone, and so is the man. The moon that night was thin and white, like a blade watching over the broken earth. Tring's heart pounded as he returned to the ruined grave of Kim Kwan. The path felt shorter, but every step heavier, like walking into a place he was never meant to leave again. Where the ancient tomb once stood, stone pillars, rotted incense, and moss-covered offerings, there was now only a collapsed crater. The soil had caved in, roots torn from the earth, and bones scattered across the ground. But what froze Trnang in place wasn't the decay. It was the absence. There was no body, no corpse, no skeleton. Just the ragged remains of a coffin, splintered, blackened, clawed from the inside. The realization crawled into his spine. This was never a tomb for the dead. It was a prison. A prison for something still living, still watching. The silence was unnatural. Even the crickets had stopped. Trnang stepped closer. He stared at the earth, then slowly crouched beside the shattered coffin. Brushing away dirt and ash, a smell rose, musky, wet fur, and something older. He remembered what Tiu Bian had said before he died. The Hyatt Mieu doesn't die, it consumes. It waits. Tring's fingers trembled as he picked up a shard of bone, not human. Curved, hollow. A fang? No. A claw. His eyes moved to the coffin's inner walls. Long scratches, running in every direction, as if something had spent decades trying to claw its way out. Or worse, something had been dragged in and devoured from within. And then he saw it. A symbol carved into the underside of the coffin, Lidan Old Seal. 3 strokes, a tail curling in a spiral, a slit pupil, drawn in blood-red pigment still faintly visible after centuries. It wasn't a burial symbol, it was a binding spell. Suddenly, the air around him shifted. The wind grew colder, and the shadows grew longer. Trnang turned. A cat sat at the edge of the clearing. Its eyes gleamed yellow in the moonlight, and its fur black as ink seemed to ripple like smoke. It didn't hiss, it didn't blink, it just stared. Then another appeared, and another. Soon, the entire ridge was lined with catslet, unmoving, watching him like judges before a sentence. Trnang stood frozen. A sickening sense of déjà vu washed over him. He'd been here before. Not in body, but in dream, in hallucination, in echoes. He backed away slowly, heart hammering. And then, the ground beneath him cracked. He barely had time to scream as it gave way. Trnang fell hard into the darkness. Dirt and rocks rained around him. He tumbled down a tunnel road damp and lined with stone. It was no accident. It was a shaft, dug beneath the tomb. He hit the bottom with a thud. Groaning, he looked up. The moon was gone. The hole now just a black eye above. The tunnel ahead glowed faintly red. Something was alive down here. Trnang limped forward. The walls were smooth, worn by age, and covered in carvings. Mice skulls embedded in the stone. Incense trays long burnt out. He passed Shrina's hundreds of themptony altars, each with a single cat tooth resting atop red cloth. At the end of the passage stood a chamber, and in the center a shrine. Gold leaf peeled from its surface, blackened by fire. On it sat a statue, a cat with 7 tails. Fangs bared, one eye missing. Its real eye glowed red, flickering like a coal. Beneath it, a pool of dark water. Trnang staggered forward, drawn to it. He saw his own reflection again. But this time, his face wasn't his. It had fur, whiskers, eyes like slits. He screamed and fell backward. But something gripped his ankle. He looked down. A hand not human gripped his leg, its claws piercing his flesh. From the pool, a shape began to rise. It wasn't the Hayat Mieu. It was Bayan, but not the Bayan Trnang knew. His face was distorted, twitching. One eye glowed red. His mouth opened, revealing a row of fangs. "Help me," the voice rasped, "or join me." Trnang crawled backward, bleeding, panting. "What happened to you?" he cried. Bayan's voice cracked like splitting bones. "I begged the Mieu to release me. It didn't. It devoured my name. My soul is now bound here, forever between flesh and fur." The air grew hot. The chamber pulsed. "Kill it, Trnang," Bayan howled, "before you become one of us." The shrine began to tremble. From the red eye of the statue, smoke poured out, shaping into the form of a massive cat, larger than any beast Trnang had ever seen. Its fur shimmered like night. Its paws made no sound. Its mouth didn't move, but its voice filled the room. "You opened the gate, child of Trnang." Trnang backed into the wall, horrified. "You broke the seal, and now the blood debt must be paid." "I didn't mean to," Trnang shouted. "I just wanted to end the curse." The Hayat Mieu blinked slowly. "To end the curse, you must understand its origin." With that, it lifted a paw. The chamber flickered like a film strip burning in reverse. And suddenly, Trnang was no longer there. He stood in an ancient village. Torches lit the streets. Cats roamed freely, sleeping in baskets and rooftops. Children played around them. But in the temple, a ritual was taking place. Trnang watched as a man's ancestor offered a black cat to the altar. The cat screamed as it was sacrificed, but something went wrong. Its blood splattered across the monk's face and the statue's eye began to bleed. The Mieu had tasted vengeance. It wanted more. Trnang was pulled back to the present, gasping. "You cursed your own line," the Mieu said. "Each generation bears the guilt, until one finally offers truth, not blood." Trnang staggered to his feet. "Then take the truth. I know now. I accept it." The Hayat Mieu approached, towering over him. "Then offer yourself, not as a sacrifice, but as a vessel." Trnang's eyes widened. "You want to possess me?" "No, I want to end it, but I need a host, a willing soul to carry the weight so no more cats will die for your sins. Silence. Then Chernang stepped forward. I accept. The Hayat Mieu dissolved into smoke, coiling around him. Pain exploded through his body, fur burst from his arms, his spine twisted, his vision blurred. He screamed, but it wasn't in pain, it was release. When he woke, he was lying in the forest. The tomb was gone, the cats were gone, the dawn was breaking. Chernang sat up, touched his face. No fur, no claws. But deep inside he felt it. The Mieu, watching, waiting, but not hungry anymore. He walked back to the village. The cats no longer followed him. They bowed their heads, then vanished into the morning mist. The curse had lifted, but the debt had only just been repaid. And deep underground, beneath a vanished tomb, an ancient shrine waited. For the next name, for the next sin, for the next child of Chernang, becoming TPC Mieu the final curse. They say when you stare too long into the eyes of the cursed, you begin to lose parts of yourself, pieces of memory, of warmth, of humanity, until you become something else entirely. Chernang stood alone at the ruins of the Kim Kwan tomb, his breath ragged, his eyes darting between the scattered bones and crumbling stones. The realization still echoed in his mind like a funeral bell. The tomb was never a burial site. It was a prison for the Hayat Mieu. And now that prison was broken. His hands trembled. He glanced at his arms. The skin no longer looked like his. A fine layer of dark fur had sprouted along his forearms. His fingernails, once stubby and dirt-stained, now curled into pointed, razor-sharp claws. His legs itched not from fatigue, but from the shifting of bone and tendon. The joints had begun to realign, adapting for something unnatural, jumping, crouching, stalking. It had begun. He had known something was wrong, after the ritual after Tiu Bayan had been devoured by the creature they had hoped to destroy. That night when the blood had been spilled under the blood moon, the Hayat Mieu had not died. It had fed, and Chernang, in running, had unknowingly become its vessel. The transformation wasn't sudden. It crept in like a fever. At first, it was the nightmares, visions of cats with hollow eyes surrounding him, mewing softly like infants. He would wake with scratches across his chest, his throat sore from hissing in his sleep. Then came the hunger. It wasn't food he craved. It was breath, spirit, life. One night, when a thief attempted to break into the abandoned shrine where Chernang had been hiding, Chernang's body reacted before his mind. He pounced, not ran, pounced from the rooftop, landing silently behind the man. The intruder never even turned around. Chernang didn't remember the kill, only the warmth of something leaving the man's body, flowing into his own. He had felt no guilt, only satisfaction. When he woke the next morning, the man's corpse was slumped against the wall, eyes wide open, mouth agape in silent horror. His soul had been drained, his skin dried like paper left under the sun. Chernang hadn't even blinked. He fled the city after that, retreating deeper into the forest, trying to hide from what he was becoming. But the curse followed, no matter how far he went. The whispers returned. You are TPC Mieu now, the final one, the devourer of the wicked. At first, Chernang had resisted. He tried meditating, praying, even attempting suicide. Nothing worked. The blade wouldn't pierce his skin. He drowned himself in a river. He awoke hours later, perfectly dry. He set himself on fire. The flames licked his skin, but left no burn, only smoke and the scent of old fur. And still, the voice whispered, "You cannot die, not until the curse is passed on." It was then that he understood the cruel truth. The curse had chosen him because he had sinned. Not in the way most would expect. He hadn't killed, stolen, or betrayed. But years ago, in a different village, Ternang had discovered an old well behind a house where a child had gone missing. Instead of reporting it, he'd taken the gold coins hidden in a tin box nearby and left the place without a word. The child was never found. That selfishness, that small decision to choose gold over truth was enough. The curse needed imperfection. It thrived on it. The TPC Mieu didn't feed on innocence. It fed on those with sin buried in their hearts. And Ternang, whether he wanted to admit it or not, had always been stained. By the third full moon, Ternang no longer looked human. His ears were pointed. His pupils had narrowed into slits. He could see in pitch black, hear whispers from across the forest, and walk without making a sound. His body moved with terrifying grace, and his scent could attract wild cats from miles around. He was their king now, and deep down, he knew what came next. Villages along the mountain began reporting strange deaths, people found with their eyes open, mouths stretched in silent screams, their bodies untouched, but completely void of spirit. Children whispered about the cat devil who came at night. Farmers blamed old demons awakened by the blood moon. But the elders they knew, the TPC Mieu has returned. One woman told her granddaughter as they burned incense under a banana tree. My grandmother saw it once, said it only takes the ones who deserve it. So we're safe? The old woman didn't answer. Instead, she stared into the jungle, as if expecting glowing eyes to appear between the trees. One night, as Ternang sat hunched on the branch of a dying banyan tree, a strange wind passed through. Cold but gentle. It didn't smell like death. It smelled like memory. And then he heard Yubian's voice. You're not gone yet, not completely. Ternang froze. His claws gripped the bark. You can still pass it on, the voice said. The curse was never meant to be eternal. You were chosen not to suffer, but to judge. He remembered now. The ancient scroll Tiu Bayan had shown him. The symbol on the Kim Kwan tomb wasn't just a seal, it was a trial. Only those who passed through the test would be reborn. The curse could be lifted, but only if he found another. Someone darker, more wicked, more deserving. Someone who had not just sinned, but delighted in it. And so began Tring's final journey. He walked the roads by night, shrouded in a dark cloak, his face hidden. His eyes watched the hearts of men, seeking out liars, murderers, and traitors. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. In one town, he found a corrupt official who had stolen grain during the famine, letting children starve. Ternang visited him in the dark and left his body twisted on the floor, spirit gone, but body untouched. In another, a man who beat his wife until she miscarried. Ternang didn't hesitate, but each time he fed, he became more monstrous. The fur grew darker, his spine bent forward. He stopped speaking, his thoughts became whispers. And yet, no matter how many souls he took, the curse remained, because none of them had accepted it willingly. That was the key. One stormy night, Ternang came across a young thief in the ruins of an old monastery. The boy had broken in, stealing from the monks' tombs, laughing as he pocketed gold amulets and ancient rings. But when he saw Ternang, he didn't run. He knelt. You're him, aren't you? The TPC Mieu, the boy whispered, trembling. Take me, I'm ready. Ternang narrowed his eyes. Why? His voice cracked like wind through dead leaves. I've done things, horrible things, not just theft. I've hurt people, lied, left my brother to die in a ditch because I wanted his share of food. I don't want to keep living like this. Silence. Then, slowly, Ternang stepped forward. The curse needed a hospital also consent. As the boy reached out, their fingers touched, and the world went black. When Chernang woke, he was human again. Fully. The fur was gone. His claws, his fangs, his hunger all vanished. He looked at his hands and saw only skin. Bruised, yes. Scarred, yes. But human. He turned to the boy. But there was no body. Only a cat, pitch black, with yellow eyes. It blinked at him once, then vanished into the forest. The curse had passed, and Chernang was free. But freedom came at a price. His memories of his time as TPC Mieu lingered like ash on his tongue. Every soul he had devoured, every scream, every scent of fear. He would live with them forever. Some say they still see him wandering the edges of towns, leaving offerings at cat shrines, whispering apologies to the wind. Others believe he died the moment the curse left him. But those who know the truth told, the haunted, the cursed thee whisper his name with both fear and reverence. Trương Tam, the final TPC Mieu, the judge of souls, and the man who, for a brief time, became something far worse than death yet walked away. For now, the demon cat revived the living as sacrifices. The village was silent except for the soft rustling of the wind through dead leaves. A heavy, unsettling stillness had settled over the small community nestled near the old forest. Mothers whispered prayers, fathers barred their doors, and the children no longer dared play after sunset. For months, an unnatural wave of death had swept through the village, one that defied explanation and reason. Trương Tam felt it first deep within his bones, the curse stirring once again. Like a dark flame rekindled by unseen winds, the bodies began piling up in mysterious ways. People would be found lifeless in their homes, eyes wide open, faces frozen in terror, with no visible wounds or signs of struggle. What frightened everyone most was the date. Each death had occurred on the anniversary of the birth dates of Trng's long-dead ancestors, very bloodline cursed to bind the demon cat. It was as if some ancient force was feeding on the blood of its own kin to regain strength, to live again. Trng tried to deny it, tried to push away the haunting memories of the TPC Mieu half-human, half-cat entity he once became. But the transformation had never truly left him. It was embedded in his soul, waiting for the right moment to return. And that moment was now. The villagers turned their fear into rage. They whispered about dark rituals, about sacrifices demanded by unseen forces. They began hunting cats, black cats, white cats, any feline creature that dared cross their paths. Superstition grew like wildfire. But it was not the cats the villagers needed to fear. It was what lived inside Trng. One night, Trng woke drenched in sweat, his body aching as if torn apart and rebuilt in his sleep. He looked in the mirror. His reflection was shifting feline eyes staring back, for sprouting rapidly, claws scraping the glass. He fought the change with every ounce of his will, but the curse was relentless. By dawn, he had lost. His voice was no longer his own. A guttural growl escaped his throat. His movements were swift and predatory. The demon cat was rising, driven by a dark hunger and an unbreakable bond to his bloodline. Trng found himself drawn to the heart of the village. He walked the streets silently, shadows clinging to his fur like smoke. Each house he passed seemed to hold a secret, a memory. His ancestors' spirits, trapped between worlds, whispered in his ears. They told him to feed, to grow stronger, to resurrect the Mieu demon catfully. The deaths became more frequent. Families lost their loved ones overnight. At the village shrine, offerings of rice and incense burned day and night. But nothing could stop the curse. The elders spoke in hushed tones of a prophecy. When the blood of the Trng line flows freely on the cursed ground, the Mieu shall rise anew. The living become vessels, sacrifices to power beyond understanding. Tring's humanity slipped away with every life taken. He no longer recognized the faces in the villagers, only the blood that tied them to his fate. His mind clouded with whispers and visions of the ancient tombs. The cries of the sacrificed echoed in his ears, haunting and endless. One evening, as the blood moon rose, a ritual began at the village edge. The elders had gathered to offer a final plea to the spirits. They placed a young girl at the center of a circle carved in ash and blood. Trinh watched from the shadows, unable to stop himself. The demon cat within demanded the sacrifice. With a roar that shattered the night, Trinh lunged forward. The ground trembled as the spirits of his ancestors rose from the earth. But they did not come to aid him. They came to stop the curse from consuming all. The final battle between man and demon raged under the blood moon. Fire met shadow, light clashed with darkness. In the end, only one would survive. The last of the Trinang line. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the faint creak of the old wooden mirror hanging in Tring's tiny hut. It was an heirloom, cracked and weathered with age, passed down through generations. Tonight, as he stared into it, something changed. In the glass, he didn't just see his own reflection. Behind him, in the shadows, a pale face emerged, cold, cruel, and unyielding. It was the face of his ancestors, the long line of Trinang who had come before him, their eyes gleaming with a chilling hunger. They smiled, a cold smile that seeped into his bones. Tring's breath hitched as he took a step back. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows stretching and twisting until they filled every corner. The faces in the mirror multiplied dozens, maybe hundreds, all watching, waiting. "You are ours now," a voice whispered, dry and ancient. It wasn't a voice from his lips, but from deep within the curse that bound his bloodline. He realized with crushing clarity, he was no longer the master of his fate. He had become a tool, a vessel for the revival of the Trinang clan's dark legacy. The village had fallen silent. No one remained but a few desperate souls, hiding behind locked doors and barred windows. The curse had done its work, wiping out those who stood in its way, absorbing the strength of those who were sacrificed. And yet, Trinang stood alone, the final bearer of the Trinang name. But even in solitude, the presence of the demon cat was never far. Its eyes glowed from the darkest corners, its whispers rode the wind, promising power but demanding loyalty. At times, Trinang would find himself drawn to the edge of the forest, where the trees bent unnaturally, their branches scratching the night sky like claws. There, the cat waited, always waiting. One evening, driven by a strange compulsion, Trinang followed the glowing eyes deep into the woods. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered. At the heart of the forest lay the ruins of the Kim Kwan tomb, long swallowed by vines and moss. Tring's fingers trembled as he stepped inside the dark entrance, heart pounding. The air was thick with the scent of earth, decay, and something older, something alive. Inside, the walls were etched with faded symbols, the seal that once bound the demon cat, now cracked and broken. A low growl echoed from the shadows, and the glowing eyes appeared once more, closer this time. The demon cat emerged, larger and more terrifying than before, its fur bristling and eyes burning like coals. "You are mine," it hissed, voice like a serpent's coil. Trinang dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. "I am your last. What do you want from me?" The cat circled him, tail flicking. "To rise again," it replied. "I need your blood, your soul, your will. You have taken so much already," Trinang whispered. The cat's gaze softened just for a moment, or was it a trick? Blood must flow for life to return. The old line cannot die. You'll bring us back." The weight of the curse settled on Tring's shoulders like an iron yoke. He realized the truth. No matter how far he ran, no matter how much he fought, he was destined to be the last link in the chain, the bridge between the living and the damned. And the demon cat, the Mieu, would never leave until the bloodline was whole again. Days turned into nights, and nights bled into days. Trnang wandered the ruins and the village, haunted by whispers and visions of those long gone. Faces of the past, twisted and hollow, appeared in every reflection, every shadow. They accused him, they begged him, they demanded he complete what had been started centuries ago. In a moment of desperate clarity, Trnang made a decision. If the curse was to be broken, it must be done by his own hand, by sacrifice, and by truth. He returned to the village square, where a single black cat waited, eyes gleaming with uncanny intelligence. Without fear, Trnang knelt before it. "Release me," he begged. The cat blinked slowly and stepped forward, brushing against his hand. A calm descended, but beneath it lurked a final, terrible truth. The blood of the Trnang line was ancient and powerful, but it was also cursed, bound to the demon cat's endless hunger. Trnang understood then that no one could truly escape the past. No one could outrun the shadows cast by their ancestors. But perhaps, by facing it head-on, he could find peace. As the first rays of dawn broke over the village, Trnang felt a strange lightness within. The faces in the mirror faded, their cold smiles replaced by quiet acceptance. The demon cat's eyes blinked one last time before dissolving into mist. He was alone, truly alone, the last of a cursed line, but free, for now. Yet in the deepest forest, where the shadows still linger, a single pair of glowing eyes watches silently, waiting for the next chapter to begin. The end of the cursed shadows never truly fade. The village, once vibrant with life and stories, now lay shrouded in silence and mist. The echoes of the past haunted every cracked wall and every fallen leaf. The legend of the Mieu, the demon cat that had plagued the bloodline of Trnang for centuries, was nearing its end, or so everyone hoped. Trnang Tam, the last surviving bearer of the cursed name, had faced horrors beyond imagination. From the cursed tomb of Kim Kwan to the blood moon rituals and the soul-consuming creature, his journey was a harrowing path through darkness, loss, and twisted fate. Yet, as the final chapter unfolded, one truth remained clear: some shadows never truly fade. After the confrontation with the demon cat deep in the forest, Trnang had thought the curse was broken, the ancient hunger finally sated. But the land told a different story. The ground trembled in places long forgotten. Whispered voices stirred in the wind, and beneath the soil of the old graveyard, something ancient stirred once more. Months passed. The village slowly tried to rebuild, brushing away the dust of fear. New generations played where children once vanished. Markets opened again. Life found a fragile foothold. But on quiet nights, some swore they heard the soft padding of paws on rooftops, glowing eyes watching from the shadows. The curse, it seemed, had merely taken a new form. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a traveling storyteller arrived at the village square. He was an old man, hunched but sharp-eyed, carrying a weathered box filled with strange artifacts and ancient scrolls. He gathered the villagers around and began to speak in a voice low and haunting. "Do you know the story of the Mieu, the half-man, half-cat who devoured souls and cursed a family for generations?" The villagers nodded, some eyes wide with fear, others skeptical. The old man smiled grimly. "This is no mere legend, it is a warning. The evil that dwells in Kim Kwan is not just a tale for the firelight. It is a reminder that some curses are born from the sins of the past. and they demand to be remembered. He opened his box and pulled out a faded painting, an ancient depiction of a black cat with fiery eyes, perched atop a twisted tree. The demon cat feeds not only on the blood of the living, but also on memory, he explained. It survives as long as people fear it, as long as the stories are told, and the warnings heeded. He looked at Trnang, who stood quietly in the crowd, now a shadow of the man he once was. You are the last guardian of this curse, the old man said softly, and only you can choose whether it continues or ends. Trnang felt the weight of those words settle deep inside him. He understood that the curse was not just a chain of suffering, but also a legacy of lessons of respect, humility, and the dangers of pride. He looked toward the darkening sky. The stars twinkled coldly, and somewhere in the distance, a cat's faint meow pierced the night. In the days that followed, Trnang traveled once more to the ruins of Kim Kwan. The air was thick with an ancient presence. The earth beneath his feet hummed faintly, alive with unseen forces. He knelt by the shattered tomb and whispered a prayer not for himself, but for all who had suffered because of the curse. I will carry this burden, he said, but I will also protect those who come after, so that no one else will be lost to the shadows. As he rose, a soft breeze brushed against his face. In the fading light, a black cat appeared, its eyes glowing with an eerie calm. It approached Trnang and brushed against his leg, a silent truce. The curse had not vanished, but it had changed. It was no longer a force of mindless destruction, but a guardian of balance, tied forever to the land and its people. Years later, the villagers still whisper the story of Trnang Tam and the TPC Mieu. They speak of a man who walked the edge between worlds, who faced darkness without surrendering, and who carried a curse with honor and courage. And when they see a black cat watching silently from the shadows, they smile, knowing that the demon cat is no longer a harbinger of death, but a keeper of old promises. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, if you listen closely, you can hear the faint sound of paws on the roof, a soft meow carried by the wind, a reminder that some stories, no matter how terrifying, are meant to be told, and that some curses, while dark and terrible, can teach us the greatest lessons of all.